have 3 books to review. And I also have 2 DNFs to talk about. And this time it's like romance edition. I also was quite sick this week, so you can hear it, but I wanted to film a video. So I'm gonna talk first about the 2 DNF. So the first one is With Love from Cold World by Alicia Thompson. I got this book like almost a year ago. I was in Paris. I went to Shakespeare & Company like a tourist and I got this book there, but I DNF'd it quite quickly because basically I didn't like the characters, especially the main female character. So in this book you follow Lorraine, who's a bookkeeper at Cold World, and Asa, who's her colleague. And Cold World is like the coldest place you can have in Florida, but since it's in Florida and in Orlando, you have like Disney, you have Universal, so there's quite a lot of competition between the tourist attractions. And so the owner of Cold World asked both of them to find some way to get more public and tourists at Cold World. And I stopped reading at that point. I didn't go too far into the book because you know that type of romances where one of the characters has like a big misconception about the other characters, like, oh no, he's like this, she's like that. And it was exactly the case for this book. And I didn't have any patience for this kind of story. I knew I wasn't gonna like Lorraine almost from the get-go. So yeah, I just decided to DNF it. And to me, it's important to like both characters in a romance, because otherwise I don't really see the point to reading the romance if at the end I'm like, yeah, I don't like him or I don't like her, so I don't root for the romance. So that's why I DNF quickly with this type of books. And then the second book I DNF'd at like 15%. It's Playbook. I don't have it, so I'm gonna show it here. It's Playbook by Jenshak. I read one of her other books before and I really enjoyed it, so I was quite excited to read this one. In this book you follow London and Brogan. So London has a PO box and she keeps receiving Brogan's mail because it was his PO box before. He just received like love letters, dirty underwear, stuff from women. He's a football player, so he has quite a lot of fun, and he's also a player. And that's why I stopped reading the book. I feel like I'm past that point in my life where I enjoy reading player stories, not sport player, but woman player, womanizers, especially when it's like new adult, because they are like 24, 23, something like that. And I think I'm past that point in my life. For example, when we met Brogan, we learned that he slept with the fiancé of a journalist, stuff like that. And he's like, oh, I didn't know, but he sleeps with everybody. And yeah, I'm over this kind of stories. And then I have 3 books that I finished reading and I'm gonna talk about them. So the first one is Other Than Friend by Lulu Moore. So in this one you follow Kate and Ozzy. So Kate is an American student studying in Cambridge and Ozzy is studying at Oxford, and they're both competing on the rowing team of their schools. She's on the women's team and he's on the men's team. And that's where the enemies to lovers come from. They're more like rivals, but not even that, because she's on the women's team and he's on the men's team, so there's not really a competition. Yeah. And to be honest, I really enjoyed the story and I thought the romance was quite sweet. The problem I had when I was reading it was the sex scenes, or every time sex could be mentioned or being horny or stuff like that, it was quite jarring. So yeah, like I said, it's sweet, but then it's like, oh, your cock, my pussy, and I'm like, ooh. This type of language, not that I really enjoy reading this type of language, but when you're writing a sweet romance, this type of language comes out of nowhere and you're like, okay. And even at some point Kate is talking about the fact that she's sticky between her legs because she's horny, and I'm like, it's not very sexy to say that you're sticky between your legs. So yeah. I also thought that the writing was, sometimes there were like a few phrases and I'm like, is this important to the story? So for example, at some point they're on a bus going to a competition in case she's like, oh, my best friend is giving me some antibac to wash my hands. The feeling is cold on my hands, and I'm like, is there a point to this to this phrase? Maybe it's like the editing could have been better. So yeah, I would have recommended the book, but when I searched some reviews on Goodreads, because I don't have Goodreads, but I always go on there before reading a book to check the ratings. And when I finish reading a book, I go there to read the reviews. And so when I read the reviews, I learned that the author decided to harass one of the reviewers who talked about the fact that some technicalities about the rowing aspect of the stories were not right, because the reviewer was on one of those teams in Oxford or Cambridge, I don't remember. But then the author decided to put them on blast on stories to respond and just harass. I'm like, okay. And the reviewer were just saying, oh yeah, this is not what happens in real life, and this is not really the term for that. So nothing bad. There was nothing insulting, nothing mean. And so yeah, I don't know if I would recommend it now. I probably won't read any more of her books, but I read at least this one. The second book I have to talk about, I don't have it physically, but it's Beg, Borrow or Steal by Sarah Adams. It's the third in the series. I don't remember the name of the series, but the first one is When in Rome, and the second one is Practice Makes Perfect. So in this one you follow Emily and Jack. They're like, again, enemies to lovers, because to me, when you're in a contemporary setting, you can't be enemies. And they are both like professors in a middle school, so it's not like they have really high stakes to be enemies. So yeah, they just started on the wrong foot, and they kind of annoyed each other when they were teaching at the same school. But like a few months, I think, ago, Jack moved away to marry his fiancée and to live with her in another state. But then he broke off the engagement, came back to the same town as Emily, and where he was teaching before. And he bought the house next to Emily's. And she decided to kind of sabotage the renovation of his home, because she's quite close with all the people in her town, and even like the construction people and stuff like that. And so she told them to not renovate the Jack's house. And then they begin to be friends. And also there's kind of like a hidden identity aspect in the book, because Jack is also a writer, a thriller writer, and his identity is hidden because his father is also a writer, and he doesn't have a good relationship with him, so he doesn't want to be linked with him, so that's why he has like a pen name. And Emily would really like also to be a writer, a published writer. She's a writer because she's white. But Emily would also like to be a published writer, so he's trying to help her with like his contacts without telling her too much about his identity. But yeah, it's an aspect of the book. She wants to be a romance writer, and at some point he's like, oh yeah, you should see if your sex scene is good in real life or not, and then they start to make out, stuff like that. Would I recommend the book? Yes, but to me it's not a very memorable book. It's nice for a palate cleanser when you read too much of a certain type of book, so just want something light and quick. This is the book for you. And I think there's gonna be a fourth book in the series, and to me the ranking at this moment in time, I think I prefer the first, then the third, and then the second. So yeah, the second book I didn't really like, because I don't like the trope of like lessons and seduction, especially when it's the girl who needs to learn. If it's the guy who needs to learn lessons, I think I would much more enjoy the trope, but when it's the woman, I'm not interested. I don't like it at all. So okay, 1, 3, 2. And I'm quite excited for the fourth one, because in the third you could see who would be the characters, and yeah, I think it's gonna be a second chance, or like friends to lovers, or a bit of both. So yeah, I'm excited for the fourth one. And then the third book I have to talk about is The Striker by Ana Huang. In this one you follow Scarlett and Asher. Asher is a football player in England, in London, and he just changed team, and now he's playing in his rival's team, and Scarlett is the sister of his rival. And they meet because since Asher as a rival. The games they play are not good because they butt heads instead of playing against the other team. So the coach during the summer tells them that they both have to take ballet lessons, and Scarlett is the ballet teacher. And to be honest, I was not intimidated because it's not that big of a book, but I think it's like 600 pages. And to me, a romance and contemporary romance in 600 pages, I'm like, how much do you have to say? And to be honest, I was quite pleasantly surprised reading this book because I really enjoyed just being in a story and following along. In this one, you also have like a chronic illness representation because Scarlett a few years ago got in a bad car accident, and she now deals with chronic illnesses, different types, like a lot of physical with her hip and her joint and stuff like that, and she had to stop her ballet career. And it was quite nice to see this kind of representation. Asher was really sweet in that way that he had done a lot of research when he learned that she had some chronic illnesses. He had done a lot of research, and when they sleep together, sometimes she hurts, and it's like they accommodate each other, so it was quite nice to read. And I also really like the sex scenes. Sometimes I just skip over the sex scenes because I'm like, what can you say new about the sex scene? But in this one I really enjoyed. There was not too much. They were not too crude also, and there were nice sex scenes. I think two things that maybe this book lacked is I always forgot that it was taking part in London, and I love London. It's one of my favorite cities in the world, and there was not enough about it. She talked sometimes, going to see a musical and talking about the tube, but I think that's it. And every time in my head we were like in the USA, because I don't feel like the setting was English enough. So yeah, there was that. And also there was not a lot about the training. We were in scenes during the training, but they were just talking. We didn't learn about what they were doing during the ballet training. And I feel like we could have learned more about their relationship, because during ballet, especially with the woman and the men, you have to touch each other. So I feel like there could have been some fun scenes during the training, but there wasn't really. I don't remember if there was even one. The third act breakup comes from Asher, and he has like a self-destruction streak. And I feel like we could also have a bit more about that to really understand why he breaks the trust of Scarlett, why he does why he makes the choices he does. I feel like we could have had a bit more about that. So yeah, I still enjoyed the book. I have other books by Ana Huang on my TBR, and I will read them. And I also forgot to mention, in this book you have like a kind of a step back, like in a historical romance step back when you open, and there you go. I don't really like this type of illustration, but maybe you do. So that concludes the video where I talk about 5 books. Let me know if you have read any of the books, if you have the same opinions as me, if you don't have the same opinions. But yeah, that will be the end of the video, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!